Hi. Hello, my name is Karin Berkowitz, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Council for the Humanities. Delighted to welcome you all this afternoon to our inaugural Community History Showcase. Over 130 of you registered today, so this is clearly a topic that's of great interest to our New Jersey community. The New Jersey Council for the Humanities is a 501c3 nonprofit and the statewide partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. We work across New Jersey to support and promote community-based collective exploration of our histories, values, cultures, and beliefs. To say a few more words about our organization, I'd like to introduce our board chair, Dan Fatton. Dan?
Thanks, Karin, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'd like to echo Karin's words of welcome. For those of you who aren't familiar with the New Jersey Council, I'd encourage you to check out our website and look at other ways you might get involved. When you do, I think you'll find that the New Jersey Council for Humanities has been very busy this last year, helping to award more than $1 million in federal funding to local nonprofits in order to help the cultural sector recover from COVID and adapt for a more resilient future. But for today, I just want to let you know how proud the board and staff are of this community history program and of its first cohort of participants, and how excited we are to hear all about the community-driven work that has been taking place across New Jersey. I just note that we talked about this type of work in our strategic planning process about 5 or 6 years ago, and to see this come to life is really encouraging, and it means that we're fulfilling our mission. So Karin, could you tell everyone a little bit more about the program and about the instructors who ran it?
Sure, thanks, Dan. And yes, I couldn't agree with you more. We are really delighted to have been able to work with this wonderful group of organizations from across the state on their projects. The Community History Program enables organizations that are interested in developing history-focused projects to learn methodologies of public history while working on those projects. Each participating organization attends learning sessions on a variety of topics and receives funding to support the development of their own project. Participants are learning from people who are doing community-based history work while simultaneously doing the work themselves, with a cohort of peers and instructors with whom share successes and challenges. That is the magic of community history. And many thanks to the New Jersey Historical Commission, whose funding enabled us to launch this program last summer. I also want to take a minute to thank the 3 instructor facilitators who conceived of and ran the program. So if each of you could just wave as I introduce you. Kristen O'Brassel-Colfin, Carol McCarty, and NJCH's own Gigi Naglak. And I also want to thank the guest speakers from public history projects around the state who shared their expertise with the cohort. And now I'd like to introduce Kristen O'Brassel-Colfin, who is the lead facilitator for community history. In her career, Kristen has worked on so many public history projects that it would be impossible to list them here, but you can find her in her day job as an assistant teaching professor and coordinator of public history at Rutgers University. Kristen?
Thank you so much, Karin. Today's program will include a short presentation from each of the community history participants, followed by time for questions and discussion. We have grouped the presentations into 3 themes: storytelling, memorialization, and place-based projects. Just one quick reminder that we are recording, so if you would not like to have your image captured, please be sure to turn off your camera. This recording will be available on NJCH's YouTube page in the next couple of days. So we thank you for keeping your microphone muted during the presentations, but please don't hesitate to post questions in the chat throughout. And we'll also be live tweeting throughout the session as well. So if you'd like to engage with us on Twitter, please use the hashtags NJCH and Community History NJ. So it has been a pleasure and a privilege working on this program over the past year, thanks to everyone at the Humanities Council, but especially Gigi, Carol, and Rachel, and the wonderful organizations who participated in this program. After all of our work together this year, I am more convinced than ever that community history is a verb, not a noun. It's a process by which we work collectively with our neighbors, either our literal neighbors or our intellectual or cultural neighbors, to shape and reshape how we understand our shared pasts. So while the projects that you'll hear about in a minute are super impressive and the end results and outputs are really worthwhile, it's really the process, the connection, the collaboration, and conversations that went into creating them that I think matter the most. And that is what makes history making and storytelling so important, conversations between the past and the present. So our first set of speakers from Storytelling Projects group of the cohort are all engaged in projects that act as efforts to fill gaps in archival records, to create more representation of all of our histories, to tell more complete stories about how we became who we are and how our built environment and communities were shaped. Sharing individual experiences through storytelling preserves the individuality of perspective while also developing common experiences. Projects in this category use stories as unique cultural artifacts that pass on personal, historical, or cultural events to others and can help to build a sense of community and shared experience. So please welcome our first panel of speakers from the Community History Organizations cohort. Raíces Cultural Center presenting on Stories of Ancestors, Stories of Healing. Piscataway Public Library presenting on Telling More Authentic Piscataway Stories. And the Trent House Association presenting on Great Migration Oral History Project. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Wines. I'm from Raíces Cultural Center. I'm a co-founder, and I am coordinating our community history branch, our new community branch. Raíces Cultural Center is dedicated to preserving cultural roots through the arts, history, and ecology. New Jersey Council for the Humanities has been instrumental over the last several years in helping us to develop and continue to share and preserve these untold and undertold stories that often go overlooked. And so I want to give a big thank you to them and echo Karen's thank you to the individuals who made this particular program possible. It was very exciting to be a part of this program. And we split our project into two separate projects. We created a project series in Stories of for the Ancestors, Stories of Healing, and today we're going to talk to you about the launch of the first of these projects called Family Ties, Stories That Inspire, which is created by our digital archive, and she used to be a digital archive intern and now a digital archive assistant, Natalie Saldarriaga, and I just would like to ask her to say hello and introduce herself real quick.
Hello, everybody. My name is Natalie. I've been with Raíces since 2018, and I'm so excited to be here and excited to launch this project and share it with everybody. So we can go ahead and present our video so you can learn more about the project. In 2018, when I first joined Raíces Cultural Center, originally as a digital archive intern, I had no clue that I'd be uncovering and documenting my own personal family history. And through this documentation, I learned just how precious family stories are, specifically for immigrants who oftentimes leave behind physical objects that are proof of their existence when they migrate. Now, 3 years later, as a Raíces Digital Archive team member, and through my participation in the NJCH Community History program, I am continuing my research and work uncovering and documenting untold and undertold family stories and history. With the launch of my oral history project, Family Ties, Stories That Inspire, I began documenting family stories and family histories of different members of my community. Aside from asking them to share a story, I also asked participants to reflect on their experience hearing these stories, what the story means to them, and how it helped them connect to their cultural roots. Back in August 2021, I had the pleasure of interviewing Jimena Ladino, a Bergen County resident and a New Jersey educator who shared a family story about her uncle.
I learned this story when I was a child.
Who told you this story?
My mom She used to tell me like little stories here and there. This is about my uncle. This is my second degree uncle, mi tío en segundo grado, meaning like he was my grandmother's brother. This story is kind of make us, as I said in the beginning, proud. I love stories, yes. But not only like my stories, I love the stories in general. I think stories really open up new worlds, new windows through the experiences of others.
Now, her uncle's story isn't this great tragedy or adventure. It's simply the story of a man with a dream and a will to make that dream come true. And the story would inspire one of his descendants almost 100 years later to preserve it and to share it with us. Stories are precious, no matter who or what they are about. And sharing them allows our ancestors to live on, especially if their stories aren't usually part of the dominant narrative. This project doesn't end here. We will continue to collect and preserve stories from our community. We all have stories, and we invite you to join us and share yours so that we may preserve them for future generations.
And before we pass it off to the next presenters, I just would like to share a link in the chat, which links to the project page, and it also allows you to get involved and share your story. There is a form there that you can fill out, give some brief information about the story you would like to share, and then Natalie would be in touch with you about working on and developing it. So thank you for the opportunity to share today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Baker from Piscataway Public Library.
And I'm Karina Gonzalez, also from Piscataway Public Library.
Karina and I are working on a project to update our local history collection. The library currently has a local history room that contains information about the founding of Piscataway in 1666 by European settlers. So we have lots of books and files and genealogy, all donated by the Piscataway Historic and Heritage Society. But what we don't have is much information about Piscataway over the past few decades or so. And the town has changed a great deal during that time. People have moved here from all over the world to start a new life. And as you know, the world has also changed over the last 3 or 4 decades. So we want to collect stories from people who live here now. And before I turn it over to Karina to explain how we're going about that, I'd like to show this book called The History of Piscataway Township, 1666 to 1976. It's a great resource that we use to learn about early Piscataway history, and it was published in 1976. So now I'll turn it over to Karina.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually reach out to our community to help us update that local history collection and tell us what it was like to be in Piscataway during historic times, such as the 9/11 attack, social justice demonstrations, or the pandemic. Selected contributions will be published in the book, and it will be available in the library for checkout to the public, so other people can, so it'll be circulated. Chosen contributors will receive a small stipend and a free copy of the book, and submissions will be in English and about 2,500 words or less, so these are definitely vignettes. We're not sharing any identifying information with the public without express permission of the contributor, and authors can choose to remain anonymous if they want to. The way we're collecting this information is we have a web page on our website dedicated to this, complete with a form that people can use to fill in the information. They're also welcome to email us if they're uncomfortable using that kind of technology, or they can always just print a copy and drop it off at the reference desk if that's easiest for them. So we had to have a lot of discussion as to which historic events we were going to include. So some highlights are, like I said, 9/11, the recession is one, when Black Lives Matter was founded, when same-sex marriage passed in the Supreme Court, obviously the pandemic. And when we had actually finalized this, it was before Hurricane Ida hit. So we added Hurricane Ida. So we might be adding more historic events to this before this is completed. It's ever changing, as is the nature of history. And that is our goal. So we're going to have an anthology, basically, of the voices of our own community from 1990 to the present. And the title of the book is When It Happened: Piscataway Reflects on Global Events. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jocelyn and Patricia Atkins, you can go whenever you're ready. You are on mute, Jocelyn.
Greetings, my name is Jocelyn Francis White, and I am ecstatic to represent the Trent House Museum Great Migration Oral History Project. First, I must preface my presentation by indicating that African Americans have a history that predates American enslavement. Scientists have documented the existence of the first human remains on the continent of Africa in the Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, East Africa, over 1.9 million years ago. The Great Migration. The Great Migration occurred between 1915 and 1970. Approximately 6 million African Americans relocated from the South to urban centers in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the West. At this time, there was truly no sanctuary cities during the Great Migration. No matter where you traveled as an African American, there was imminent danger lurking in the shadows or even in the daylight hours. It is imperative that I mention the sheer determination and courage of these migrants. This was not an easy decision to leave their families and friends for the unknown. What were the reasons for the migration? Well, many people were seeking better economic opportunities. They were seeking improved housing and better education. They wanted to escape the terror of the KKK, Jim Crow laws, and lynching, which over 3,500 lynchings occurred between 1862 and 1868. Now, these new locations were often perceived as the land of milk and honey, and opportunity and intelligence, but it often turned out to be a land of barrenness and bitterness and adversity and ignorance. Of course, now we are witnessing a reversal of the Great Migration as many African Americans are relocating back to their Southern roots. Why the Trent House? The Trent House Museum may seem like an unlikely institution to embark on a Great Migration project. The museum currently seeks to present a window on the full history of Trenton, from thousands of years before European colonization until today. It is imperative that the stories of people who have been traditionally excluded from US history be captured. What do we want to accomplish? It is our vision to document the achievements as well as the challenges of those who settled in Trenton. We also strive to engage our community, especially our young people, in learning and preserving this history. We want to ensure that future generations have access to this information. And now I will turn it over to Patricia Atkins.
Thank you, Jocelyn. The next question is, who did we engage and what have we found out? Well, we held 2 focus groups with a total of 16 participants who had broad and experienced and in many instances, long-lived networks in the Trenton community. Our major themes are that the stories of the people we engaged were and are important to understand and definitely to preserve. The reason for this is because in so many, if not practically all instances, this particular history of the Great Migration is not taught in depth, or if it is, in some instances, is not taught at all. Our orientation was to get our own house in order first. And the Trent House is currently taking steps to research and present everyone's story. That means ethnic groups that are connected with Trenton. Where are we now and what's next? Thus far, we have engaged 7 families who have committed. We have a list that's much longer, but at the current time, we have 7 families who are absolutely committed and signed up for interviews. Indeed, we had one interview of a husband and wife who came to Trenton themselves during the Great Migration. We had that on Monday. It really was a resounding success. The questions were posed by Jocelyn and myself with technical assistance from Sam Stevens, who's in the audience here today, and with one of the students from the College of New Jersey. Our major theme for this whole project is that these particular stories are important to understand and to preserve. We have 6 students from the College of New Jersey who will be participating in the project, either for academic credit, and some as volunteers, and some who will be paid for their participation under a special project at the college. Our expectation is that we will continue this project with the College of New Jersey over the next several years. And I just, as a trustee of the Trent House Museum, I would like to express our deep appreciation for the funding that we've received for this project. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And now I think it's over to Gigi for our memorialization projects.
That's right. Thank you, Kristen. So our next group of projects are all looking at the idea of memorialization. Now, I should say in advance that all of our projects all deal with all of these questions of storytelling, of memorialization of place. But these projects in particular have allowed our organizations to think about the events and people that a particular community chooses to memorialize, perhaps did not choose to memorialize, leaves out of memorials, and how that reflects the values and voices within a community, how that's happened historically and how it can happen in the future. These projects all consider what it means to memorialize something, how communities can play a larger role in decision-making around memorials, and how we think about public memorials that currently exist. Obviously, this topic is very much in the news these days. So these projects in particular have really had to think very deeply and grapple with what it means to memorialize and how memorials reflect the time that we live in, as well as moments past. I'm joined today by 3 organizations: the Enslaved African Memorial Committee, with their project Revelation, the hidden story of enslaved African presence in Bergen County, 1700 to 1920. Salvation and Social Justice, the AME Church in New Jersey Justice Technology Trail and Documentary, and Old Mill Hill Society with their project Revolutionary Conversation, Whose History and Whose Freedom Anyway. So thank you to my three colleagues who are here. Patricia from the Enslaved African Memorial Committee, do you want to introduce your project, and I'll get your video queued up.
You're on mute, Patricia.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Let me thank you all for this great opportunity. We've learned so much, and Gigi and Christian and Carol and Karen and Rachel, thank you. It's been a journey for us. We've been in this. We've been on the project for since 2015, when a group of concerned community members wanted to commemorate the African presence in New Jersey during the period of 1600s. I said 17, but really we should go back as far as 1600. And so we came together, sort of a motley crew, trying to figure out where we would start and how we would commemorate and give presence to these people that helped to create and build the infrastructure for Bergen County, always lost and omitted through the history books. So it's been quite a journey. In the context of this project, I want to thank you all so much for the methodologies I've learned that I could share with my group, as well as me reaching out and communicating with other significant partners, whether they're historians, libraries, local community members that could share their knowledge with us and get us on the right path. It is overwhelming, it is Herculean, but one of the things I will tell you that my committee has appreciated is a support system that's been built into this community history project. So thank you for that. We have so many more ideas. Thank you, Gigi. Our work continues, but here's a snippet of what we plan, what we want to share. And we thought it was really urgent given the times, and not to mention this summer, we had a unique opportunity to further discover through an excavation project done by Montclair University, an overlooked, but a very prominent African-American community that was in Paramus, New Jersey, called Dunkerhook. And so having said that, Gigi, feel free to set the video. Thank you.
My name is Ted Manville. I live at 263 Dunkerhook Road in Paramus, New Jersey. I've been living here for over 31 years, and the house I live in here has a history that goes back until the late 1790s or even earlier, in early 1800s. This was one of the Zabriskie homes of a family that's lived in the area, this region, Bergen County, going back to the late 1600s.
Hi, my name is Chris Matthews. I'm a professor in the anthropology department at Montclair State University, and my specialty is historical archaeology. In front of me, I have a sample of artifacts that we excavated earlier this year from the Dunkerhook community in Paramus. Dunkerhook is special for lots of reasons, primarily because it was an African-American community in the 19th century. It was founded by two formerly enslaved individuals and their families. They were known as the Bennetts and the Stewarts.
This house here, I've met direct descendants, talked with them even recently, of the Bennett family that lived in this house and of the other families that lived at the Stewarts and the Ciscos.
They were enslaved locally by the Zabriskie family who owned the property they lived on, but after gaining their freedom, they ended up creating a community of several households who found work in the local area as domestics, as farm labor.
They had a community here that lasted up into the early 1900s. Right, Dark Corner, the name that they came there, two reasons: because of the African Americans, and some said it was also from the big golden poplar trees. It was so dark.
Dunkerhook, located in Paramus, New Jersey, means dark corner in Dutch. The area known as Dunkerhook was created in the 1700s by wealthy landowner and slave owner Albert Zabriskie. Dunkerhook began as a community of formerly enslaved Africans who worked for the Zabriskie family and other wealthy slave owners. These former slaves, upon their emancipation, rented the homes constructed by the Zabriskis. The community was anchored by an African Methodist Zionist church and one of the first schools to be constructed during that time. The last remnant, built in 1802 on 263 Dunkerhook Road, is the only vestige of the community that remains today. All others were destroyed to make way for development.
The house that I live in here on Dunkerhook Road here has changed and evolved, as I said, over the years here. And what many people that study, slavery, African-American history, American history in general, or whatever, don't realize that in New Jersey was one of the most, in the northern states, the most heavily populated in slaves, because the agricultural purposes were here.
I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me, together we are going.
Let's now talk about the slave history of this property. The Zabriskie Kip Cadmus House, Albert brought slaves to Bergen County. Slaves needed a burial ground. When they died, white people and black people were not buried in the same location. One of the Zabriskis, her name was Helena Zabriskie Kip. She gave an interview in the year 1951, and she said, white people are buried on higher ground. The slaves and Indians are buried down near the river. So that was confirmation, one more level of proof, because there were no tombstones. And the Bergen County Division of Cultural and Historic Affairs, where I was trying to get them to buy and protect the property, said I needed proof in the form of bones. This story was being reported in the Record. It was actually front page news. Also, at that point, we had formed a coalition, what was titled the Coalition for the Preservation of Teaneck's Slave and Indian Cemetery.
A little long, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you so much. Are the Boyers from Salvation and Social Justice.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Rosalie Boyer, Salvation and Social Justice.
Charles Boyer, just super excited, very grateful to the council for the opportunity to reflect on some things and to really think about history. So we're a strange organization to this kind of work, being an advocacy organization. Our work from Salvation and Social Justice is rooted in Black faith and advocacy, Black faith and policy. And so doing this kind of work historically is super meaningful to document, particularly to be focused on the work of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in advocacy work in New Jersey. And when we started this project, we envisioned a digital marker trail all throughout the state, which would document things like the Underground Railroad stations, which work through many of our churches throughout the state. You've heard even in some of the previous presentations how AME churches were instrumental in the centering of the emergence of Black communities, safe Black spaces in New Jersey. We also envisioned a documentary project to go with this, to talk about the intersection and the work specifically from one Black denomination in the state in this work. And we did that because to think about the entirety of Methodism and Baptist would be overwhelming. But what we found is that even marking the AME journey in New Jersey would be overwhelming. And through research and in the midst of this project, when we started this project, we were based in one of our congregations in Woodbury. In the middle of our project, we were transferred to our church in Trenton. And from doing the deep dive work just in Greater Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church in Trenton, it is a treasure trove of Black faith and the AME church by itself. And so we have super hyper focused on looking at Mount Zion AME Church in Trenton, which whenever you pull up, and the folks from Trent House can attest, you pull up any book like this one, The Quest for Equality, Trenton's Black Community, or any work on Trenton, you will see Mount Zion AME Church in the midst. It was the first Black congregation organized in Trenton, one of the first in the entire state, organized around the Underground Railroad. It has a rich history of advocacy from its starts in the late 1700s all the way, if I could say so ourselves, to the current day. And so we are super excited. A couple of pieces which we have come to in the past couple of months, the historic original church on 135 Perry Street, which is already a historical marker. We look to use the basement as a digital walkway to tell the digital story of the church and mark its history all the way from the colonial era, slave times, to the current day. We also look to do a documentary about it. Rosa Parks visited, it was her first stop after the bus boycott. Her first national speech was in Greater Mount Zion Church to document all of this history. And then in the new church, where we are on Pennington Avenue, we look to develop a mural project on the wall, which would tell the story from the original church and that whole history of liberation and advocacy to the modern day. Here, I'm going to give it to Rosalie to talk about the other aspects.
Right, and hopefully we want to make sure that this is a marker where it could be a route for schools to do tours so that they can actually see the history and feel the history, because this is something you won't get in a textbook. And, long-term, second phase, we want to be able to continue this trail by having markers throughout all of the AME churches, and particularly going back to where we were in Woodbury, we had the original schoolhouse that still is also a historical site, and it actually had the floor for the Underground Railroad. So this is where we want to go with our project. And again, we are so super excited to be, here and be able to present this. And, we're so grateful for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, and in closing, just to highlight, with the rich history here at our capital church in the capital city, we can then develop the template to help the other churches throughout the state get to that deep history. And so we're super excited, and we're looking forward to what this all eventually looks like.
Thank you, Reverend Boyer and Mrs. Boyer. We really appreciate you telling us about your project. I'm gonna close out this section with our colleagues from Old Mill Hill Society. Michelle?
Hey everyone, how are you? I feel quite humbled coming this late in the lineup because there are so many fabulous projects, but we're really excited about our little effort in Trenton. So Trenton, as you probably know, plays a pivotal role actually in our country's Revolutionary War history. So there is a lot of focus on celebrating that. One of our big events every year is called Patriots Week, and they host reenactments and have lots of different activities focused around commemorating this revolutionary history and our pivotal role, from Washington's Crossing reenactment to battle reenactments to all kinds of things. So, however, there's been a large segment of our city that's not really felt all that included. There wasn't really much of a nod, besides some really great work by Algernon Ward, a historic reenactor, to bring the African-American experience to the forefront. This was kind of hovering there in a lot of our minds, but maybe not as obvious until the Black Lives Matter movement a couple summers ago. And at that time, there were a lot of great peaceful protests about social injustice and the need to come together and improve things. And a statue of George Washington that's in our neighborhood had some graffiti put on it. And that really brought it home for a lot of folks and prompted, like, hey, yeah, we really need to address this issue, right? And how do we tell a more holistic and inclusive version of history? And whose stories are not told? And what did those promises made in the Revolution that talk about all men created equal and endowed with inalienable rights? What did that mean for people who were enslaved and it didn't apply to them, right? So we started up with a committee, members of our neighborhood. We reached out to people throughout the community. We have teamed up with the Trenton Free Public Library, with the NAACP, with Sprout U School of the Arts. And I'm super excited to say that on December 27th, as part of the annual Patriots Week celebration, we will be hosting this revolutionary conversation. We're going to transform the upper story of our library into a living museum. Sprout U School of the Arts students have selected the stories of real life African Americans that lived during colonial and revolutionary times to portray. And they're excited because many of them didn't know, even Sally Hemings, who's pretty well known to most adults, they were not familiar with her story. Mambette and several others, Phyllis Wheatley. So they've really enjoyed, the students have really enjoyed getting to know these people and doing their research. And so we also have teamed up with the author, and Gretchen is going to be trying to come out and attend our event. And we're also going to be providing books, copies of her book, which inspired these efforts, called Answering the Cry for Freedom, that tells stories of African Americans living during those times. African Americans during those times faced a lot of different choices, right? The British offered them freedom if they signed on to fight for the British. Others stayed, others fled. A lot of times you fled north, but that didn't guarantee your freedom, right? So there's a lot of nuance, and I think this will be a really engaging opportunity for our community. We're offering books for free to participating families, as well as the students that are portraying the characters. We're going to also have some opportunities for people to put on Post-it notes, different ideas they have as they leave the Living Museum for ongoing conversation. We picked some of the topics based on a Facebook Live conversation we had that the library hosted. And so we had a survey of the community and found out what issues they thought would be important to address. So we're just super excited. We hope you all can, if you're in the area, come and join us, and happy to answer any questions. But we're just excited and hoping that, if we don't use up all of our very generous grant from the council, that we may be able to kind of reprise this for Black History Month in February. So that's our plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Much appreciated. you also remind me that I want to remind everyone, if you have questions or things that you'd like to discuss, we will be having time after our last presentations. We have one more group to go for question and answers and comments and discussion. But you can also feel free to put any questions or comments that you have in the chat. Please don't hesitate to do so. But at this moment, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Carol McCarty, who is our Community History Project Coordinator. Carol.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce the 3 projects that are place-based projects. The projects in this category all center on the significance of place and providing a tangible link to stories about a community's history. And they connect those living in a certain place today to the lives of individuals who lived there in the past. This focus on place emphasizes the significance of where the past took place and also the role that this location played in the past as well as in the present. So the 3 projects that we have in this category are Clinton Hill Community Action, the Clinton Hill Photograph Collection History Project, the Community Partnership for Egg Harbor Township Schools, Egg Harbor Township, a documentary, which will be a video. And then we also have the East Trenton Collaborative, a community history project. So if the Clinton Hill Community Action program can start. I'm not sure who's going to be presenting.
Hello, everyone. I miss you guys.
We miss you too, Keisha.
Hello from Clinton Hill Community Action. We are a nonprofit community development organization focusing on revitalizing the Clinton Hill neighborhood in North South Ward. One of our organizational values is to preserve and respect the neighborhood's rich history. We want to thank the New Jersey Council of the Humanities for the training and the network opportunity. Today, I am excited to have my colleagues here to share what we will be doing next. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. And the voice you are hearing now is Katim Shearer-Eel, our proud executive director here at Clinton Hill Community Action. And as Keisha said, we respect community and neighborhood history. And for us, it's the way we build trust in the community. And it's the way that we get traction for the work that we're doing as a new organization just founded in 2019. This project for us is really core to who we are. And the reason why it is because so much about our neighborhood is just skewed in the dominant narrative. And we're trying to change that. And not only are we trying to change that, we're trying to use sort of the history, the people who have come out of this community as a way of inspiring the residents who are here now to join us as active agents for community change. I'm talking about history like knowing that Clinton Hill was home to the first M&M factory, that Dr. King visited this neighborhood before going to Memphis and unfortunately being assassinated with none other than Rabbi Yoakum Prince, who was the rabbi for the B'nai Abraham Temple right here in the heart of Clinton Hill, spoke on Washington with Dr. King. Or Wesley Tan, the fashion designer, first African-American to have a studio on 7th Avenue, or history as I'm learning it and talking to people, Stephen Burroughs, who lived in this community and was the only African-American fashion designer on the 73 team that won the Battle of Versailles fashion show. So for folks who are in the fashion world, you know how big of a deal that is. For folks who are here in this Clinton Hill neighborhood, we want people to be inspired by this richness and join us in the work of transforming our neighborhood. So we're going to be working with residents, historians and archivists to put all of this history together in a written narrative, do some oral interviews of key figures who are here now, some of their families, for those who have gone on. And we also want to take the time to really highlight all the historically significant places in our neighborhood so that we don't forget sort of the contribution that these physical places have made in the fabric of our city, and install plaques and other markers to note that. But we're going to make history come alive through the use of a cell phone guided walking tour where folks can get out and experience the history as if you were in this neighborhood then. And the last two pieces of our big picture project are really what we're here to talk about today. And I'm going to save that for my colleague Renata to share more. And that is our community photography collection project. So stay tuned for more on that, but just a sneak preview as we get ready to share more on the neighborhood's history. We want to share a short video from the community historian, Mr. Arnie Penix himself, as he's telling a little bit about some of the historically significant places in our neighborhood.
We call it the White House. And this house here, some of the Boris family lived in there. Their cousins lived in this house. And this is on Walcott Terrace, which is another historical house. This house here, Emily Miles, who was the first black female designer in the city of Newark. Her house is located on South 10th Street, right across the street from Mary Baraka's house. This house here is Miss Silverstein. She's the first Jewish lawyer in Newark to become a judge. And that was in the back in 1960s. This house here is another historical house. This house was one of the Osborne's house. And the original Osbornes came here. And Osborne Terrace celebrated our 100th anniversary in 1990. So the block is very historical. And these are some of the nobles of our community at that time.
All right, so as you can imagine, thank you, God team. Hello, everyone. My name is Renata Whitaker, and I'm the Deputy Director here at Clinton Hill Community Action. And as you can imagine, oh my goodness, just like Arnie Penix has that information, we want everybody to be able to have that kind of information at their fingertips. And so using what we learned here, with the project and the $3,000 grant from the History Council, we are going to be working on a community photography collection project. And with that, we're going to be partnering with a professional archivist. And so with the professional archivist, they're going to be able to do a deep dive showing more diverse representation. If you can look at that photo that we have there, I mean, it's not really, you know. But so we want to be able to get them to deep dive and show more diverse representation of Clinton Hill so that the young person that's 12 years old, that's 14 years old, that's walking by can see themselves in the project. We're going to collect and preserve and research photos, securing rights, of course, because, you know, there are rights that we have to get, rights to the photos, to determine public domain, and then curate the collection and create finding aid. You know, every collection has to be curated, and we want it to be done to the utmost respect and done with quality, right? And then we're going to digitize the whole experience for online access. So not only are folks going to be able to see it in their neighborhood and be able to access it that way, they'll also be able to digitize it for online access. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to our illustrious Executive Director, Katim Cheryl.
Thanks, Renata. So there's a lot of enthusiasm on our part and the part of residents in this community to have our story told. And so we invite you all to continue to stay connected with us. Renata is going to take the lead on this project as our Deputy Director managing our program team. But we're going to be creating a whole entire page on our website dedicated to the History Project. So we ask you to visit our site for updates. It's at www.clintonhillaction.org. Thank you so much for the experience and the shot in the arm and all the great learnings that we got through this entire training. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody from Clinton Hill. So now we'll turn it over to the Community Partnership for Egg Harbor Township Schools.
Thanks, Carol. I'm here with Ellen, who is our community partnership representative. My name is Leanna Mullen, and we represent South Jersey here on the call today. But we decided rather than going back and forth in our presentation, which is going to be a documentary project coming out in the next few weeks, we put together a video. So I think Gigi has that ready for us, and we can go ahead and play that video. We've been wanting to do a documentary project that expanded beyond what we do with the students and to really reach the community. So that was something we wanted to do for a long time.
So during my senior year, I was an intern at the Historical Society, and my idea was to make a documentary about the history of the township as a whole. I was a senior when COVID hit, so all of the senior projects that I was working on, everything like that just got halted.
When I saw the New Jersey Council for the Humanities have this first community history cohort available, the first person I thought of reaching out to was Ellen, because I knew that she had this background in grant writing, but also I thought we'd make a really good team on this cohort to have the community partnership and the students involved to create a documentary project.
It gave us a unique opportunity to still give something back to the district. Like, we were able to purchase some technology that you need and that the school will use, and that makes me happy. And then, also really contribute to something that's gonna withstand the test of time for a little bit.
Then once we were selected, I thought that this was a great opportunity to bring back Nardine to finish the project she never got to complete.
So I have been doing all of the, most of the interviews and most of the interview questions. So I'm kind of the investigative reporter on the project.
The money allowed us to purchase a drone for the Communications Academy, but then going into the academic enhancement part, the comm camp that's run every summer is free to students, have the opportunity to come in for a week and get an intensive workshop camp. And we centered it this year on the documentary project.
Because as I'm growing up and going through college, I know my life will take me in other directions, and there won't be many chances or opportunities to still reminisce and at least be in some way involved in my town's history. And so I decided, this would be a great experience, both professionally and also in a fun one.
I think we just need to keep digging. I think we've barely scratched the surface with the questions that we have.
Figuring out how to tell the story as the story is shifting, as we're shooting it, because we have an abundant amount of information behind the camera that we gathered, but to translate that on camera and to try and make a story is incredibly hard.
I'm just very proud that we're doing this. I'm glad that someone has taken this project up and is doing something that's so important, because I think our students have a lot of EHG pride, but sometimes it can be taken for granted, and it's important to see where we started and how we got to this.
We all have a lifespan that's going to be, short at one point in time. So the opportunity to share my moments of my enthusiasm of the Egg Harbor Township School District, particularly the opening of the high school, this is a highlight of my career.
We're looking forward to having a finished project at the end of November, at which time, certainly everyone who participated today and were part of our cohort will invite you to some sort of virtual premiere or something like that. But again, just a thanks for having this cohort and bringing about this new grant opportunity. We really see it as a seed project to bringing out more opportunities within Egg Harbor Township, and we thank you. Just to conclude, some of those you saw were excerpts of our actual documentary project. Ellen and I will not be in it, but some of the video that you saw does include about a dozen interviewees that we had. I also did put my email address in there if anyone ever wanted to reach out to us about our project, and we hope we'll reach out to the cohort when our documentary is finished in another few more weeks.
Thank you, Leanna. And I just wanted to say, I think it's really great that all of you are leaning on each other and talking about reaching out to the cohort and inviting each other to see your projects. That's been a huge part of this project from the beginning, and it's really nice to see it, see you guys really reaching out to each other and leaning on each other. So last but not least, I want to introduce the East Trenton Collaborative to give their presentation.
All right, welcome everyone. My name is Kurt Latuma and I'm a program coordinator with the East Trenton Collaborative. We're a neighborhood revitalization initiative based in the East Trenton neighborhood in the city of Trenton. And our work focuses primarily on community development, which we do through a community organizing framework. And this means that we try to empower residents and allow them to guide our work as much as possible. I'm joined on our community history team by East Trenton resident Dolores Fairweather, whose own local knowledge and stories have been a great source of information and whose efforts have helped tremendously to push the project along. So from the time I started working in the East Trenton neighborhood, I've heard so many anecdotal stories about, about neighborhood history that I found to be very interesting and valuable. I've heard stories about how at one time there were so many businesses in the neighborhood that you could leave one job in the morning, find another one by the end of the day, and then they would have you ready to start tomorrow. Or about how the neighborhood youth used to make the new kids in the neighborhood run through an old abandoned cemetery as a rite of passage, which for any Trenton people here, we now know that it's the historic African-American Locust Hill Cemetery, but at the time, this knowledge was really only known to the people who lived in the area and had that conscious memory of what it once was. And I've also heard about how the community would come together to organize and to get things done long before anyone from ETC was involved, about the African-American women who would have meetings at their homes when issues came up, and they would take things right on down to City Hall to let their voices be heard and to advocate for action on their priority issues. So all of these stories contain very valuable historic information that we believe is important to the social fabric of the neighborhood. And while I've been hearing all these stories, I couldn't help but also think that they likely weren't being captured anywhere in one central place. So this is what led us to apply to be a part of this community history cohort. And let me briefly say that we're very grateful to everyone on the community history team for the opportunity to do so and for all the guidance that you've given us over the past several months. So currently we're in the early interviewing stage of the project, and we are hoping that the final product will be some sort of signage that will highlight either one or multiple historic locations in the neighborhood. And we also really want to connect this to audio files of the interviews or of our discussions with residents so that observers are able to hear stories directly from the voices of the East Trenton residents themselves. And that is all I have. So thank you, everyone. I think I was the last presenter for the day as well.
Yes, you are. So I think we hand things over to Kristen now, right?
Yes, thank you all so much. Let's just take a moment and applaud virtually or audibly for everyone for sharing your wonderful projects. Thank you all for giving us so much to think about and talk about. And I know we're all really eager to see the next phases of all of your projects as they continue to develop and grow. So thank you all. So we now have about 20-ish minutes, a little bit less, for questions and discussion. And I know that we all have plenty on the community history team, but I'm sure that our audience members and maybe even our organizations have questions for each other as well. So we can go ahead and collect any questions or comments that anyone wants to share in the chat and then present them out to everyone. But I saw that Michelle had her hand up briefly. So if you want to go ahead and get us started, Michelle, go ahead and unmute.
I'm sorry, actually, that was me applauding.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you anyway. Applause is still
That's
welcome.
okay, sorry.
No, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and mute for a moment if anyone would like to jump in with comments or questions, and I'll keep an eye on the chat to share anyone who wants to place it there, and then we can read it aloud.
I would like to say everyone did such a great job.
Agreed. Thanks,
Yes,
Keisha.
everyone did such a
Always
great
room for more
job.
applause.
Yeah, hi, it's Marion here from the Center for Folklife of Northern New Jersey. Congratulations to all the grant winners and presenters and content creators. I would love to know, what techniques are you using to engage the community, either to come forward with stories, to click on your links, to come to your archives? And, you know, because that's all important to all of us. We can create wonderful projects, but if people aren't seeing it and sharing it, we're kind of in limbo. So I'd love to hear how you solve the problem of audience engagement. I mean, I say it's a problem because, of course, we're competing with so many different types of social media and entertainment.
That's a wonderful question, Marion. Thank you. Patricia, did you want to respond?
Well, my thoughts initially are these, that, you know, you have to kind of, if you're working from the grassroots level, collaborations are, you know, essential, so that, you know, I'm thinking about what we do here, and this is just a touch of the iceberg, but we have a collaboration with the library, the local library, because there's a lot of traffic in our town for the library. And there are other libraries that are bigger than ours that we reach out to share our project with, and events and activities, for example. Because one thing about, I think, the system of the library system is they're all interconnected. They share books, they share information. So once your librarian gets your information out there, then other communities, other counties, you know, are aware. So that's been very important to us. And then on the ground, we work with local groups like the YMCA, for example, youth groups in schools that might have an interest, whether it's a history club, a particular cultural club that might want to engage us. So there's also that part of it where our volunteers, who are teachers, many of them, will extend and share the information about our work with their particular schools and things like that. And then, of course, most certainly the churches. So, you know, having a connection with various churches is also helpful. And, you know, there are other organizations that are social and civic. So the real thing is to keep yourself out there and share the information as widely as you can, and get people to get on your social media so they can, you know, be current. That's my thought. Thank you, Jocelyn.
A wonderful, wonderful response and question. Does anyone else want to chime in, thinking about how you do kind of active, engaged outreach to make sure that all the wonderful things you're creating are really getting to the people that you made them for?
Well, through our focus groups, we engaged our participants to be ambassadors, to share the information about our project far and wide. And also with our interviewees, we also hope that they will share the information. So we're just getting started. It's on the Trent House website, and hopefully it will be disseminated. But I love what Pat said, because that gives us some additional suggestions and ideas. Thank you, Pat.
I think one thing that our group in particular benefited from in this cohort was reaching out to other like-minded groups or other organizations that wanted that same goal of reaching in our case, Egg Harbor Township's history. So when we branched out to the Great Egg Harbor Historical Society, they were as much on board about this project as us. So we then tapped into their resources, the people they know, and then with that, like the web just kept expanding. So I think we've talked about having the whether it ends up being virtual or an in-person premiere, we are going to do it together as a group. And then with that, we're going to reach that much greater of an audience.
I have a thought. Can I share? You know, I think that these stories are so incredibly important and significant and powerful. And I don't know if Christian, you or Gigi or anyone else on the staff can help us figure out, like, I would like to take a lot of what I've learned today about the different projects and embed them in my website. You know, I think about Elaine Buck's project to produce that documentary, which is, if anybody has seen it, is truly brilliant. And I think about what the Reverend is doing with the AME Church. I think about what Jocelyn has shared with her research and her information, which I find fascinating. Raíces, I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, the Clinton Hill, I mean, there's so much I want to know about and I'm overwhelmed, but I want to embed this, like some of these clips that you might have, finished products, into my website so that you kind of build outward. So people go in, they're learning about us, but they click on and see what's happening in Clinton Hill. They click on and see what's happening over there. Is there a way we can, is there some proprietary issues surrounding that for us to do it? Or is it just consent from the various organizations? Yes.
You have my permission to use anything that Raíces puts out there on your website. Of course, it's meant to share.
Thank you so much.
Co-support and co-feature,
Oh, thank you.
Collaborate and cooperate. That's part of what we do. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I'll say, Patricia, I agree. I think it shows up as Reverend Boyer, but this is Rosalie. I agree. I think if we share each other's projects on each other's, network, that's how you broaden the reach. I think that's excellent.
Thank you. Great.
Hello, I'd like to say something, if I may. I'm Princess Hoagland with the Trent House Association, and I hope that all of us can find some way to collaborate with one another to make each of our individual projects more robust. And when I think about Reverend Boyer's church, and he is now the pastor at a church that my uncle attends. His name is Jasper Clark, and he's 101 years old right now. Yes. And I think about, yeah,
he's he's wonderful.
Thank you. And I just think about how having the congregants there tell their stories about how they became involved with Trenton, with the church. My uncle, he told me a very interesting story that he didn't learn how to read until he was in his 60s, but he always carried his Bible around with him. And that was the first book he learned how to read. And that's the only book that he reads. So just hearing that story from him just a couple years ago, I was just so excited that the Trent House is doing that historical type of gathering of information about the people who migrated up from the South and hearing all those interesting stories. And I think that all of us can work to make each other's projects enrich them even more, not even understanding how, like with Egg Harbor Township schools, I'm thinking, how can we bring those things together? And I'm thinking about our high school students here at Trent Central High School, them doing that type of projects, just hearing those ideas from other organizations just sparked so many ideas for me. But I would love for us to exchange information. I'm sure the cohorts have done that already, but let us get together and have that yearly, at least get together when you do those things, and let's talk about what more we can do to help one another. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And just so that you know, we agree. We think that we should do something like that. We've been discussing how to get people together on that kind of basis to have really broad-ranging conversations about these topics. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll go to Patricia and then Carol.
Thank you. In response to Patricia King's query concerning whether the information that has been collected by the cohorts is proprietary, one very important thing that we did, and if other people have not done it, I would certainly urge that they consider getting releases from all of the people who are interviewed by them. That's really important, and have the release be broad enough so that it can be shared by the rest of us. Thank you.
I just wanted to go back to Marion's initial question and sort of circle back to this conversation that's happening right now. You can either be part of a community history program like this, which we specifically made it a cohort-based program so that you could all learn from each other and lean on each other. But this is a perfect example of, Marion, if there are any organizations out there that are doing work that you admire, reach out to them, because chances are they will be more than happy to share what they've done and how they've done it. That's how we developed part of this program. One of the first things when we were trying to figure out how to do this, we reached out to other humanities councils who were doing community history programs that we admired and that we liked. So even New Jersey Council for the Humanities does it. So find organizations that you admire and are doing the work that you want to do, and talk to them.
Thank you for that, Carol. You know, I agree completely. And I would add to that, that the very thought that you're asking that question is really important, right? That's the first hurdle. A lot of organizations just kind of assume that, you know, they did something wonderful and everyone will want to know about it and will automatically find a way to find out about it. But I think each of our participants here, these organizations, have found really creative ways to identify audience members and make sure that they're aware of the work that they're doing, and more importantly, even incorporate them into the work that they're doing, which then builds its own expanding network out as you move forward in your projects. So thank you all so much for sharing. And we'll see one more round if anyone has questions they want to ask, and if not, I have one I can open up to everyone, but I'll hold it. So let's see, we have Jasper who asks, can the cohort share more reflections on the learning sessions? Which did you find the most valuable? What were some of the most important skills, practices, or techniques you gained? And Jasper also says, congrats. So feel free to jump in.
I'll jump in. I think the one of the things that really inspired me about the learning sessions were definitely the guest speakers. I think that just speaks to what we were just saying about reaching out to other organizations for inspiration and help. But also by seeing a lot of the guest speakers, it helped to shape our ideas about what we wanted to get out of community history projects. And very specifically, I'll just mention the idea that narrative, the dominant narrative that gets shaped a lot of times, kind of, you know, in a skewed way. One of the things that happens instead of just, for us, instead of focusing on the struggle and the trauma and the tragedy of the things that have happened in most of the histories that end up erased, we incorporate that, but also want to look at the other parts, the things that don't make those communities live in struggle or be defined by that trauma or tragedy that was imposed on them throughout history.
I think it was really a forum for us to, for me, the platform and the sort of ability to meet like minds was one of the key highlights of this project for me and for our committee, because oftentimes when you're discovering, researching, sharing stories and history that's not been shared, being affected as a marginalized community, you feel sort of lonely. So I'm really thankful that New Jersey Council of Humanities gave us this opportunity to meet each other through this cohort group. It was very, very edifying and empowering. I also like the way both Gigi and Kristen conducted the various sessions, long that they were very, very important and powerful. And they taught me things. Having been in academia, I think I know certain things, but you really taught me some things I wasn't aware of. And not to mention gave us a forum to learn from others. And, you know, I agree with Nicole. I think that one of the strengths of this whole experience was the keynote speakers that you brought, the guest speakers, and the ability for us to ask questions, not only of them who have been down that place, but of each other. And so you picked the right cohort. I think we all complement each other. And I just want to thank y'all before we leave for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you to the staff at, you know, New Jersey Humanities, because I think without this project, and keep it going, there's so many other groups that need to learn about what y'all are doing and get involved in it, because there's so many stories out there. It's not one story, right? It's not one narrative. So thanks again.
Yeah, we definitely want to chime in on that. I mean, we thought we knew something about facilitating and community visioning. But we were, you know, that's what we do from an advocacy standpoint, but we're like super impressed and took a lot of notes in the way that Gigi and Christian and Rachel walked through this. And some of the things that were very helpful for us, that the guest presenters were awesome. And I think we all definitely agree with that. But what I really liked about the process is that we were never afraid to revisit what we had put on the table.
Right, right.
And we thought we had a pretty specific focused area. But it really helped us to go really razor sharp. And in the very, you know, where we ended up at the end is similar, but far more focused. But we understand that in order to do justice to the narrative, it's better to unpack it and cook it slow than it is to try and cook a you know, slowly cooked individual meals are so much better than fast cooked buffets.
Right.
And that's what was super helpful for us.
Right. The space to kind of mind mapping. It was brilliant how you know, and just the atmosphere that you created. I thought it was, you know, it was like what Patricia said, very rewarding. And the guest speakers were inspiring, right? It makes you look at where you are and a possibility of where you're going to be. So we truly appreciate, you know, the opportunity to be a part of this team.
For me, if I can speak, I just wanted to say that it was really inspiring to just hear about all the things that are happening in New Jersey. I currently don't live in the United States. I currently live abroad, and I don't know if it's because I'm a bit homesick, but I walked away after every session just feeling so proud to be from New Jersey and hearing all these different stories. And sometimes you forget that so much history happens in our little state. So it was wonderful to hear everybody's projects every week and see them develop, and obviously the guest speakers. And yeah, thank you so much again.
Thank you everyone for all of those wonderful comments, which makes me feel fantastic and even more grateful to have had the time with you here. And I agree, Reverend Boyer, that was a fabulous analogy and is very much, I think, how we should all be thinking about this. So I will conclude our Q&A portion by passing this back off to Dan Fatton and then back to Gigi for final comments. So this is just me one more time saying thank you all so much. This has been delightful, and I can't wait for a reunion eventually.
Thanks, Kristen. And thank you all for attending today, and especially to the presenters for both participating in the program and sharing your stories. On behalf of the whole board of trustees, I want to thank my fellow board member, Laura Herzog, who's here, and express our gratitude to the staff and consultants who helped make this program happen. I also want to thank representatives from Senator Booker's office, Congressman Kim's office and Governor Murphy's office. I think we had a few folks come in and out during the sessions, and we'll be sure to follow up with all of them after we get the recording posted. You know, I'll say on a personal level, I found this really inspiring. It was great to hear about each of these projects, and I'm really excited to actually see where they go next. I heard about a walking tour in Clinton Hill. I heard about the coding through the Mount Zion AME Church. I heard about some cool things happening in Trenton and elsewhere throughout the state, and I'm really excited to see what you all do next. So thank you for participating. Thank you for sharing your stories and helping us tell untold stories that need to be shared throughout the state. And I will, I believe, turn it back to Gigi to wrap up.
Wait, I'm going to unmute myself before I say thank you so much, Dan. I want to also, before we leave the thank yous, thank our colleagues from the New Jersey Historical Commission. I know I saw Noel and I saw Greer. And if I missed anyone, I apologize, but this project, this inaugural community history program was funded by the New Jersey Historical Commission's grant program. And we're so grateful for your support of this important work. I am completely overwhelmed, truly. And I apologize. I'm feeling very emotional about it all. But it is a truly magical experience to watch such important work get done. Whew. I'm so sorry. This idea originated, I think, from back in like 2017 or thereabouts, as a need expressed by the community. There were a lot of organizations that are not professional history organizations who nonetheless see enormous value in history as a means of helping us to understand the worlds that we come from, the worlds that we're living in today, and the futures that we wish to build together. How we have not done that well and how we have, things that we have to celebrate and things that we have a lot of critique to do as well. It came out of a need to do that we created this program. The program would absolutely not have been possible without my colleagues at the New Jersey Council for the Humanities, Karen Berkowitz, James Kirkland, Angela Speakman, our amazing intern, Rachel Barber, and of course to Kristen O'Brassel-Colfin and Carol McCarty, who manifest this program with me. I'm so grateful. But even more importantly, again, one more time, my wonderful colleagues from Raices Cultural Center, Piscataway Public Library, the Trent House Association, Enslaved African Memorial Committee, Salvation and Social Justice, Old Mill Hill Society, Clinton Hill Community Action, Community Partnership for Egg Harbor Township Schools, and the East Trenton Collaborative. They are phenomenal. And that does not even begin to talk about all the other associated organizations working with those sort of flagship organizations on the Community History Project. The organization's projects are very much in process. You've heard about things that are coming in the next few weeks, things that have happened here. In the coming weeks and months, I hope they will be able to finish up this first part of their projects, but I hope these projects will continue to grow and evolve over years, decades. I hope they continue community history work forever. I encourage all of you who are here today to keep tabs on these projects and get involved with them as appropriate. And we at the New Jersey Council for the Humanities are always happy to help make those connections whenever we can. This is just the beginning for community history. This is the first year, but certainly not the last. In fact, we will be running 2 cohorts of community history in 2022. One in the summer and one kicking off in the summer and one kicking off in the winter and then one kicking off in the summer. Winter comes first. Full program details for that and applications and timelines and everything will be available that first full week of December. So please do come back and check it out. We're going to be building out our website right now. If you go to our community history page, there's some basic information, but as these projects are wrapping up and we have more to share, we will be sharing it there. And we will be regularly keeping up with our community history cohort and future cohorts, bringing our cohorts together to increase our knowledge. I was really excited to see so many comments about how can we share these resources together? And that is one of the primary objectives of the community history program. sharing amongst each other, but also sharing more broadly. If your organization is interested in applying for community history, if you know an organization that might be a good fit for us, please do check back in. The best way to stay to hear about this project and anything else that's happening with the New Jersey Council for the Humanities is through our website, which is njhumanities.org. Good luck spelling humanities. That's one that I typo all the time, despite the fact that I spell it every single day. We share news and updates through our Facebook page, through Twitter, and through LinkedIn, as well as our monthly opportunities and events, approximately monthly opportunities and events email, which you can sign up for through the website, njhumanities.org. I do have to say to the cohort that I'm really very disappointed that none of you listed my enthusiasm about how to build a budget as your most useful cohort learning session that we had, but that's fine. That's fine. It's okay. I agree wholeheartedly with all the assessments that are amazing opportunities to gather ourselves together and with so many other colleagues around New Jersey, many of whom are here today, was absolutely the best part about it. I think that's all I have to share at this moment. Please we will have this up on our NJCH YouTube page and linked from our website in the next couple of days. It always takes a couple of days for Zoom to get us our recordings. And don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions for anyone involved in community history and especially for the New Jersey Council for the Humanities. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon. Viva Community History. Bye.